first-time managers and leaders, and especially you women, are you experiencing self-doubt? And if you are, then this is specifically for you. When you're navigating career advancement, a new job, progressing from being a manager or an employee to a new supervisor or leader, it can often come that as we move through that journey, we label what we call imposter syndrome. But I call it something different. And I don't really like the stigma surrounding that label, imposter syndrome. So I've got a bit of a different take on it, and I want to share that with you here. So you see, typically we reference imposter syndrome when we say we have unfounded feelings of self-doubt. It is that we feel incompetent in a new role or whatever that might be, despite our education, our experience, our accomplishments, right? You know the kind. It's when we hear people say to themselves, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. What if they find out I'm a complete fraud, right? That sooner or later, somehow I'm going to be found out. And if you've ever felt like an imposter at work, you're not alone. Research shows that 62 studies of imposter syndrome, a lot of them focused on women, suggested that anywhere from 9 to 82% of people report having feelings like that at some point in their career or life. So no matter where you are in your career path, no matter who you are, no matter what field or industry you're working in, at some stage, you're going to feel that, right? And some of the academic research also found that success in childhood and doing well at school could also really contribute to imposter feelings later in life, which is super interesting. Research showed also that to counter these feelings, people often end up working harder. They end up holding themselves to higher standards. And so this is often where we start to see people with perfectionism standards and that perfectionist tendencies. And so that means pressure on ourselves to do well, do better, to be even better than everyone else, which can eventually take a toll on emotional and physical and mental well-being, which can then result in taking a toll on your performance. So there's even leading imposter syndrome researchers. There's one by the name of Valerie Young, and she describes 5 different main types of imposters. And she has a book called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women: Why Capable People Suffer from Imposter Syndrome and How to Thrive in Spite of It. So the fact that there's so much research, there's stuff being written around it, it's become kind of this popular term that goes around and gets thrown around, and people start to label themselves with. And I don't always think labels are healthy. And so before you go labeling yourself with what is essentially a very derogatory term, right? Imposter means showing up as someone other than you, and almost being fraudulent, or like, you should be convicted of that almost. And then syndrome obviously is a health issue. So calling ourselves an imposter syndrome is essentially saying, I'm a thief and I'm stealing my own health. So rather than think in a derogatory way, because words have power, I want you to ask yourself, is it really imposter syndrome, or am I experiencing something else? Because true imposter feelings involve self-doubt, uncertainty about your talents and skills and your abilities, a sense of unworthiness that really doesn't align with what others think about you. And so, in short, really being an imposter means that you think you've fooled other people into believing you're something you aren't, right? And what I find when I'm working with many managers or leaders, particularly through my Manager to Leader Shift program, because a lot of that program is specifically built around improving your competence, confidence, and credibility. And the one that most people, I find, government leaders and corporate leaders that I work with, fall down in is confidence. So of course, we're going to start having a bit of imposter sort of syndrome when we're lacking in a bit of confidence. But often they're finding themselves in an environment where sometimes their peers just don't make room for them, or they even make subtle innuendos and suggestions that you don't deserve your success because of their jealousy or their own lack of confidence. So sometimes I've seen a woman lately who just landed a senior role and she was still finding her feet. It was her first 30 days. And one of her peers commented to her that women don't usually make it in this job, right? So that, of course, is like tearing someone down. That's not that she's incompetent at her role, okay? Perhaps also the inverse could happen, and others are telling you, my gosh, you're the best hire for the job. You were so made for this role and you were so ready for your next career step. But you're going, oh, I'm not so sure. You know, there were other people, and is it really me? So all of these kind of situations are really quite normal. And true imposter syndrome would mean that if others were praising your talents, you would still be writing them off, right? You would be saying, oh no, it's just, I was lucky to get the role, or it was just timing, or there was no one else. That you don't believe you earned it on your own merits, and that others are going to realize that eventually. And that just means you end up living in fear and you keep striving for that perfectionism. Now, what I find is that that's not exactly what's going on, right? That quite often people do know that they're skilled, they've worked hard to get where they are, and they're just feeling a little bit wobbly in this new role, new way of being. And it's not uncommon to feel unworthy when you've just earned a new role or you've just become a new leader. It's not uncommon to have a degree of anxiety over wanting to do something well. And when it's new, you have all of this nervous energy around, how will I know I'm doing well? You know, can I measure that? Will others see that? You know, am I going to stumble and fall? And so all I want to encourage is, let's look at framing this as something else, something healthier and more positive, because this really is quite a common thing. And in my view, how I see it is these are just symptoms of expansion and growth. That whenever we're in this new familiar or unfamiliar setting, when we're in a time of change, when we're in a new role, when we're learning new technology, we're learning new skills, we're in an unfamiliar environment, it is completely normal to be in a space of expansion. It is completely normal to feel positive about the changes that are going on, because you've essentially asked for this change in your life, in your career, in your job. And when you're going through these expansion symptoms, it's because you're stepping out of the familiar to the unfamiliar. It's because you've gone from what you currently believed about yourself into a new picture or vision or belief of yourself. And so basically, you've moved out of your comfort zone and you're feeling a little bit wobbly. But we all know that when we get out of our comfort zone and into this expansion zone, that's where growth lies. That's where we become better leaders. That's where we become better humans, where we learn new skills, where we up level. If we'd all stayed back in kindergarten, we'd still only have the skills we had in kindergarten. So, sure, making this transition can come with some challenges. It can bring anxiety, even suffering initially, right? Because over here, we were experts in our little pond. And over here, we're new and it's scary and it can feel heavily and we can be struggling, right? We're paddling as fast as we can. Whereas here, we might have been smooth sailing. But outside of our comfort zone is where we experience everything that we're actually desiring and why we made the change in the first place. Because we want the growth, we want the freedom, we want the ease, we want the flow, we want the new, we want variety, we want a financial uplift, we want excitement, we want kudos maybe, we want to have a cool title, we want new opportunities, and we want to feel confident and like we're becoming bigger and better. When you invite this change in your life, you're inviting the expansion symptoms that come in the gap in between. They go hand in hand. You cannot avoid them. And all this means is During this phase in between, your dear little brain is rewiring. It's finding and learning a new program. It's diving into new things. This expansion zone is like this new Technicolor dreamland. And so your little brain is going to send you signals to say, warning, warning, wait a minute, what are you doing? This feels scary. Right? Stop. So our dear little brain and our gorgeous nervous system have a job, and they have a job to keep us safe. And when we're moving into expansion, we can feel unfamiliar and very scary. And so the brain is going to want to keep you small, and the brain's going to want to keep you where you were. The brain is going to say, just stay there. It was easier in that old role. You knew what you were doing. You knew how to succeed. It's familiar. It's predictable, right? And our subconscious mind and the nervous system are going hand in hand and going, let's just stay safe and secure here. Let's not rock the boat. And all you can really do, my friend, while you're doing this leap and making this change is breathe. Breathe, because when you have your heart and brain in coherence, your breath connecting them and keeping them in alignment, when you calm your farm, all is well. All is well. And your beautiful nervous system can settle. It can start to get used to there's a bit of change going on. And eventually this too then becomes the normal and the safe. One day that's how it's going to be. And so you so have got this. You can keep your cool. Let's just keep it real. And these feelings and your amygdala going crazy will fade and settle as you get more comfortable in this new space, right? In this new city, this new partnership, this new job, whatever it is. That too will become familiar one day. But there's a big difference between imposter syndrome, doubting your abilities, feeling like an imposter, and just expansion. Expansion syndrome. It is just part of growth. And so you get to choose how you view it, how you manage it, and how you label it. And I'm wondering what you would choose. I have a couple of little tips that might help you make this transition a little bit less painful. Number one, share your feelings. Just speaking them and bringing them to the light and acknowledge them can also help others who might feel they're in the same position at some stage. It also creates an opportunity to maybe hear, share, brainstorm, sounding board, some strategies for how you might overcome some of those feelings while you're going through that transition. So just share. Number two, be curious. Have a curious mind about your beliefs, right? When these feelings surface, actually ask yourself, do they actually support you? And are there actually any facts supporting these beliefs that are coming up? Look for pieces of evidence to counter them. Notice what your beliefs are. And if you have to, rewrite new beliefs. I used to be that, but now I'm growing and learning to be this. You can change your beliefs too. Thirdly, do not compare. Please don't compare your journey, your leap with anyone else's, because everyone has unique abilities. They've all got different life experiences. They're going to experience this expansion completely differently. And even though it might seem like someone else's transition is a walk in the park and like they have everything under control, you do not know what's going on underneath. You do not know. And it may not be what you think it is on the surface. So don't compare. And thirdly, invite the growth. Say, come on, leap, right? Lean into something new. Even if someone else seems to have done that easily and you're in the messy middle, who cares? Be scrappy, be messy, be open to change, celebrate every little mini win along the way, and say hello to the bigger, better, growing version of you on the other side. You are not an imposter, you're an expander. And I see you.